Testing, testing. Testing, testing. Testing, testing. All right. We're going to go back to old school improv when you raise your voice and you hope that everyone hears. How are we doing? All right, try 3. Plan C. Okay. Let's turn this off. There we go. Okay. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
It's a good morning. Here we are. We're getting lots of sound now. Sorry. There's a part of me that would like Catherine just to play the prelude all over again. Would that be okay? No, we won't do that. Okay, well, good morning. It's the second Sunday of December. How many of you have your festive holiday decorations already up? Anybody? Anybody got them strewn across the room but not officially up yet? That's how it is in my house, yes. No snow here yet, but we certainly had lots of rain in the last 24 hours, and lots of the rest of BC has had good snow. Can we hear me okay? Okay, good. Here we are. We gather on Sunday mornings in this beautiful building in the home of the North Shore Unitarians, where we gather on Sundays to support one another, to live with greater depth, meaning, and purpose. We try somehow to illuminate this wondrous mystery of life. We do that for each other. We build community, we support one another, we laugh, we eat soup, we sing, we reflect, we connect, and then we take that with us into our week, hopefully to build others up and create joy and creativity in a world that can sometimes, especially this time of year, feel very dark. Ultimately, we're companions walking each other home. So the topic of today is grace. I'm being challenged with my grace. There we go. So for some time, I've actually been pondering this idea, this word of grace. And I'm sure you've had this experience. When you start to think about something, it's amazing how it then pops up in the world in places you'd never previously seen it. There's a poem I have that a friend gave me in high school so many years ago. She lovingly wrote it out on bright yellow steno paper. Do you remember that paper? It was long. It took 2 pieces of paper. It was scotch taped together. She did it in marker. It was florally decorated with beautiful flowers and vines. And the poem is about sadness. I recently looked at it again, and for the first time, I saw this stanza that I hadn't really noticed before. And it was this: you begin to accept your defeats with your head up and your eyes open, with the grace of a woman, not the grief of a child. And that stanza had never really stood out to me before, perhaps because in my younger years, I didn't even understand it. I do think if you'd asked me like 10 years ago what that stanza, if I'd asked me to recall it, I would have said, you accept your defeats. Much more binary, much more fixed. We all soften as we age. And I think the fact that it says grace of a woman, not the grief of a child, rather than grace of a woman, not the grief of a girl, reminds us that grace, although traditionally thought of as a feminine feature, is really not gendered at all. In fact, I've seen grace in many men in this congregation more than in most places I have spent time in. So my understanding of grace has definitely evolved over my lifetime. You know, as children, things are planted in us, ideas like seeds. And if the environment we grow up in nurtures that thought or idea, then those beliefs grow stronger. And then as adults, we have to question those beliefs. And if we realize that those planted or nurtured beliefs are wrong, like wrong because they're untrue or wrong because they're hurtful, we need to get rid of them. We need to weed the garden of our beliefs. Pull those ugly suckers out of there, right? That's part of the work of growing up, of being a responsible, thoughtful adult in the world. So I feel like I've spent maybe many years trying to figure out what the word grace means. But before I go any further, I want to ask you what the word grace means to you. And let me eliminate a couple things right off the bat. I'm not referring to the grace, the song, or the chant you might say before a meal. That's not what I'm referring of. But do you remember Johnny Appleseed? That was always a favorite of mine. So not that one. There are social graces, you know, saying hello, please, thank you, offering a handshake when you meet someone. Important life skills, but not what I mean by grace today. The musicians in the room might be thinking of grace notes, right? Not essential parts of music, but added for extra impact or beauty. Not for today. Or maybe you remember someone called Grace. It's a beautiful name, right? Grace Kelly, Grace Jones, Gracie Allen, Gracie Burns. Lovely, but not what we're including in our category of grace today. So I'm just going to ask you to close your eyes and think, what does the word grace mean for you? Just for about 10 seconds. I timed that. That's about how long it takes me to sing Johnny Appleseed in my head, just saying. Anyway, okay, so now I'm going to ask you to be brave. We never do this here, but I'm going to ask you to be brave and turn to someone near you and just in 10 or 15 seconds share what the word grace means to you. Hold on. 2 ground rules. Number 1, no judgment. And most of all, I mean no judging your own thoughts, no censoring what came into your head. Just say it, just as it came into your head. And the second rule is don't leave someone out. We're a loving and inclusive community. If you talk to someone and you notice someone's not in a conversation, just encourage them to join in. We can do this in trios or quartets. So just for a minute, ready? What does the word grace mean to you? Go for it. Do you know that one of the worst parts of this job, being the service team leader, is actually calling to us to cease the conversation you're all joyfully having there? It is. It's one of the worst parts. Okay, I look forward to hearing what you shared in those conversations about grace. And with grace, I will share that the soundboard just fixed the mic situation. So thank you very much. I would guess, though, that your conversations just now included words like kindness, compassion, maybe mercy, maybe even forgiveness. I'm not sure. The word grace comes from Latin, meaning gratia, pleasing, favor. Grace also means charm or thanks. Some of you may recall from a number of years ago, Reverend Marcus, he had a small collection of religious words that he called wounded words. Do you remember this? It was 2016, 2017. He felt these words still had such powerful meaning for all of us in this world, especially Unitarian Universalists. But so many of us would bristle at certain words, right? Often they had Christian roots, or there was something that felt not right for us. Wounded words a la Marcus included words like worship, blessing, sin, prayer. Maybe the word grace has that association for you also. So let me ask, how many of you actually associate the word grace with something to do with theology, divine grace? Anyone? Okay, some, not a lot. So how many of us do not? It's not an association with anything. Okay, and there's some of you that didn't raise your hands. I love it, good. So that's really interesting. We're going to spend today exploring a little bit of these ideas and see if we can come to a place of comfort with the idea of grace, divine or humanist, or maybe both, or maybe it doesn't matter. And to start us off, we're going to sing the well-known song, Amazing Grace. Trigger warning for some, the G word God is mentioned in the last verse. We'll talk about that last verse later. The verse is to sing God's praise. So if that doesn't work for you, you can say sing out praise or sing the world's praise if that suits you better. This song is deeply embedded in our culture. I bet most of you know the words without even looking. So if that's the case, I encourage you just to close your eyes and just be aware of the thoughts and feelings that come to you as we all stand and sing hymn 205, Amazing Grace.
Now
So beautiful, so much we can explore in there. But first, some candle lighting. Brian, where are you? Brian, would you come and light our chalice together? Brian Wellwood, member of the board, head of the Building Grounds Committee, which has been very busy this year. Also the person that the board always turns to if they have any church-related finance questions. So Brian, before you light that, hold on one sec. I asked Brian how long he's been coming to North Shore Unitarians. And his answer was that he's been coming since he was 43. And I said, Brian, like you've only been coming 10 years? He actually invites us to guess how many years that is. So thank you for lighting our chalice. We start our time together every week with the lighting of the chalice. It marks our time together as special or reverent. We light the flame to remind us of the light and warmth that we share and find in community. We kindle this flame as a symbol of our gathering. May the light of understanding illuminate our darkness. May the warmth of sharing bring us peace. Thank you, Brian. As always, we light 2 other candles in our weekly ritual, and the first is for joys and sorrows. And this week, we have some capital J joy. Pamela and Peter, would you come up, please? So we're delighted to share that Pamela and Peter are signing the membership today. Yay! So Pamela and Peter first came to our community a couple years ago, and they hung out for a while, and then they kind of disappeared when things started feeling not so great. And then they bravely came back to try us out again, and we're so glad that you did. Not everyone knows Pamela and Peter yet, but they have been hard at work. Pamela's been involved in some of the social media work and been redesigning the front page of our website. Check it out. There you go, thumbs up from the audience. And Peter's been hard at work at some signage and also with the Building and Grounds Committee. So not everyone knows you yet, but they will come to know you, and those of us who do know you think it's just amazing. We feel very honored and blessed that you're choosing North Shore as your spiritual home. So thank you. So feel free to light a candle this morning, the one over here, sorry, as part of our joy. There you go. Yeah, to set someone on fire the first time you're up here signing, that wouldn't go very well. There you go. Perfect. There we go. Thank you. You can blow it out. Oh, you're good. It's okay. You're good. You can go back now. We're done with the video. Go back to sound, Peter. We really need you on the soundboard. Oh, it's so good to laugh. Allison, would you come up here, please? This is our other joy for this morning, is that Allison, who has been part of this community for 22 years, is signing the membership. Allison, you're an amazing human being. You have shared your gifts of caring and music for this community for all those many years, and you have stood by this congregation in some very difficult times. And throughout that, you just encouraged us to be the best we could be and to deepen our connection and deepen our spiritual growth. Yeah, so we're very honored and delighted that you're choosing to sign the book. There's a line in The Grinch Who Stole Christmas, and the line goes about the Grinch having a heart that's 2 sizes too small. And when I think of Allison, I think she's got the biggest heart of any human I've ever met. So. Do you want to stay and light the other candle for us? It's just turning into one of those days, isn't it? Okay. So there may be some sorrows that haven't been brought to kind of the public light. And if that's the case, we just respect that there are both joys and sorrows in our community, and we'd hold space for all of those this morning. And last, our candle of global concerns. So this week, we light a candle for the bravery of the South Korean population who stood up to a declaration of martial law by an unpopular president. With vivid memories of the 1980 massacre, which was the last time there was martial law in South Korea, the public responded so quickly at the announcement at 10:30 at night on Tuesday, December 3rd. Lawmakers began making their way to the National Assembly as soon as they learned of the announcement, hoping that enough of them could get inside beyond the security cordon to establish a quorum and hold a vote. The opposition leader did a 23-minute live stream video on social media asking the public to help. And help they did. They gathered in the streets. They stood up to the armed soldiers. They formed human chains. Others managed to stop armored vehicles from moving. Just 2.5 hours after that announcement that the president had declared martial law, 190 lawmakers had made their way into the parliament and unanimously voted to block it, with the people's help to get them there. Good old Margaret Wheatley, hey? The power of a small group of committed people to change the world. A candle for their bravery this morning. Thank you, Allison. Beautiful. Thank you, Vox Lumina. Okay, let's come back to grace. For the theists in the room, the idea of divine grace is found in many of the world's religions. It's defined as God's mercy, favor, love, help. Universally, Christian teaching is that grace is unmerited, unearned, because God gave mercy, redemption, grace to humanity by sending his son Jesus to die on a cross. Now, if you then go into individual areas of Christianity, it gets a lot messier. The idea of grace and how we earn grace is actually thought differently in different sects of Christianity, like Catholicism versus Protestantism, liberalism versus conservatism. So let's just keep it simple. Some Christians, like Catholics, believe that divine grace and mercy are available to them if they behave, if they practice certain sacraments or rituals. Whereas others, like Lutherans, believe that divine grace is given to all, freely, to the most deserving and the undeserving, sort of like how the rain falls on everyone. Similarly, in Judaism, divine grace is granted to all, even those who are considered unworthy of it. In Islam, grace is attainable by those here on earth who God determines meet certain Quranic criteria. This is not meant to be a lesson in the world's religions, but it's helpful to know that the concept of divine grace doesn't have a universally accepted definition. Okay, let's come back to the song Amazing Grace. It's a very interesting story. Does anyone know when the words to that song were written? Allison. Of course, Allison, when? Any more other guesses? 1772. The words to that song are 250-something years old. It's amazing. It's one of the most sung songs anywhere, but certainly in English-speaking parts of the world. And the words were written by the Anglican curate John Newton as part of a sermon to be delivered on New Year's Day, 1773. Just the words were written then. The tune that we're all familiar with didn't come for another 62 years, until 1835, when American Baptist song leader William Walker paired the lyrics with the known tune, traditional tune, New Britain. And it was documented and shared as a shape song. So shape notes are something, as you see in the picture, it's written in a way that kind of people who aren't musically inclined can sing it, and it's called shape songs. So he wrote the lyrics to Amazing Grace based on his own experience of grace and mercy. He had a pretty eventful life, that fella. His mother died when he was 6. He got sent to live with different family members. He was conscripted into the Royal Navy. He escaped death a number of times, including a time when he suffered malaria while being captive on a ship. And that was the moment that he thought of himself as a wretch. That's where the word wretch comes in that song. Such a great word, wretch. Anyway. The dark side of the story is, of course, that John Newton participated in the Atlantic slave trade movement. And he himself captained a slave ship for many years. One of his near-death experiences happened on one of those slave ships. It was a violent storm off the coast of Ireland in 1748. The ship was tossed back and forth. Some of the crew were swept overboard, and he found himself praying. And of course, you know how the story must end. Newton was spared. The ship reached safety. He marked that event as kind of pivotal in his progress to conversion to Christianity, and that set him on a path towards a better life. Slow path, mind you. He kept doing the slave trade thing for another 7 years, and it was 24 years later before he wrote the song, or the words to the song. In that time, he had suffered a stroke. He'd become an ordained minister because he had to leave his work on the ships. And he was actually, by the 1780s, he was actively fighting for the abolition of slavery. So he was still alive in 1807 when Britain finally passed legislation to abolish the slave trade. So although there's no link directly between Amazing Grace and the abolition of slavery in Britain, the hymn was written by a man who became an activist against something that he once had profited. And Newton said of his own kind of life, he reflected that it will always be a subject of humiliating reflection to me that I was once an active instrument in a business at which now my heart shudders. People change. So it seems fitting that the hymn has become an anthem against all forms of social injustice. Slaves sang Amazing Grace on the plantations. Liberated slaves sang it in black churches. Martin Luther King sang it on civil rights marches. And it gained even more popularity during the Vietnam War, during the protests, most notably the rendition by Judy Collins. Of course, it's been recorded by many musicians: Elvis Presley, Andrea Bocelli, Celine Dion, Aretha Franklin. Do you remember the moment when Barack Obama sang it at the funeral? Yes, it was a beautiful a cappella version, and he sang it in his eulogy for Reverend State Senator Clementa Pinckney. He was one of the 9 victims of the Charleston church shooting in 2015. On a lighter note, there was a top-selling version in 1972 by the Royal Scots Dragoon Guards. It was a bagpipe version. It was probably quite beautiful. One last little tidbit about Amazing Grace. Does anyone recall a famous kind of classic novel in which one of the characters sings Amazing Grace? Anyone? Uncle Tom's Cabin by Harriet Beecher Stowe. It was in your head, wasn't it? Yeah, there you go. That's Marcia the librarian over here. So that book was published in 1852, and the protagonist, Uncle Tom, he sings 3 verses of Amazing Grace. But what's interesting is the last verse he sings was not part of John Newton's song. at all. It was actually taken from a different hymn, from Jerusalem, My Happy Home. And so that third verse we sang today, when we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we'd first begun. You can almost feel that because it kind of comes out of nowhere compared to the flow of the rest of the song. The current version of Amazing Grace was arranged in 1909 by Edwin Othello Excel. He trimmed the original 6 stanzas into 3, and he bolted on the interloper verse from Uncle Tom's Cabin. Quite fascinating. So we know that the idea of grace is somehow embedded deeply in our culture, both through that song and the fact that the idea of grace has something that just speaks to us. It pulls something in all of us. But then what exactly do we mean by grace? Well, let's look to other worldviews. Brother David Steindl Rast, he's a Benedictine monk. He says, grace is something that comes from the heart, not from the head. It's not cognitive. But he clarifies to say it's not the opposite of thinking, it kind of includes thinking. And playfully, he says, thinking is a dangerous activity. It tends to run away with us. You enter into your real heart in the space between your thoughts. I like that, the space between your thoughts. For most of us, it's actually difficult to find the space between our thoughts because we're always racing with our thoughts. We don't stop. He says, stop thinking and you're in the space of the heart. And what comes next is grace, the cosmic wisdom of aliveness that flows through us when we stop thinking. There's a beautiful video of Brother David Steindl Rast, the Benedictine monk, and he's having a conversation with Jack Kornfield, the Buddhist monk. And they're specifically discussing grace because so many of us who come from a Judeo-Christian background have this very narrow concept of what grace is. And so David says, well, growing up, grace for me, it was something like you got from God. Sort of like God had these bottles of grace. And for different occasions, you'd be sprinkled with like sanctifying grace, or maybe, like helping grace. Sort of like a pharmacy, he said. He goes on to say, but now for me, grace springs from the great mystery of life. My concept has grown. The image for me is different. That mystery that some call God, for me is just life, and the wonderful mystery that is immersed in all of us. And out of all this springs grace. He says, watch a cat or a panther. That grace is so natural. There are no impediments, just grace. So he says grace is about taking away the impediments that we have or we encounter as humans. When you watch a young dancer learning to dance, she's clumsy. She's constantly thinking of what she's doing. She's feeling judged. She's self-critical. And as she improves, she stops thinking. She stops needing to think. And then she loses the clumsiness and she becomes free-flowing and just deeply graceful. So grace is that simple, that pure, the cosmic wisdom of aliveness that flows through us when we stop thinking. Frederick Buechner, famous author, preacher, he spoke and wrote a lot about grace, and he kept working till he died at age 96. He said, listen to your life, see it for the fathomless mystery it is, in the boredom and pain of it, and the excitement and gladness. Touch, taste, smell your way to the holy hidden heart of it, because in the last analysis, all moments are key moments, and life itself is grace. He also said, remember that grace is unearned. There's nothing you have to do. There's nothing you have to do. There's nothing you have to do. He says grace is something you cannot ever get. You can only be given. There's no way to earn it or deserve it or bring it about. And he says it's kind of similar to there's no way that you can bring about your own birth. Maybe you've heard this quote, karma is about getting what you deserve. Mercy is about not getting punished for what you deserve. Grace is being blessed even when you don't deserve it. It's funny, but it does remind us that grace in its broadest definition really is not earned, it just is. Oh, but that brings us to that deep vulnerability we all feel that we are not worthy. Sometimes we battle our whole lives to feel worthy. We spend a lot of our time not feeling worthy. Paul Tillich, a 20th century theologian, he spoke to this. He said, grace strikes us when year after year, the longed for perfection of life does not appear. when the old compulsions reign within us as they have for decades that destroy our joy and courage. Sometimes there's a moment when a wave of light can break into our darkness, and it's just like there's a voice saying, "You're accepted. You are accepted. You're accepted by that which is greater than you, something the name of which you do not know." But you don't need to know. You don't need to do anything or seek anything or intend anything. Just simply accept the fact that you're accepted. I think that's what grace is. It's just feeling accepted, having that deep and strong feeling in yourself, I am okay. I have a place in the universe, no matter how small that place is. Grace is about feeling accepted just as you are by something greater than your own individual life. And the best part of that concept is that we don't need to wrestle with what that greater something is or isn't, whether you believe or not. We don't need to do anything about it, just accept the fact that we are accepted. This is put much more eloquently in a poem by Rumi. You know, Rumi, we quote here a lot, but I remind myself that Rumi was a Sufi Muslim mystic poet who lived in the 13th century. And he wrote, "You are so weak. Give up to grace. The ocean takes care of each wave till it gets to the shore. You need more help than you know." I love that. We're all weak. We're all part of a larger mystery. The ocean taking care of each wave doesn't demand that the wave call it any particular name. The ocean taking care of each wave does not demand that the wave believe anything about the greater ocean. There's no need for the waves to believe or understand that the ocean has sacrificed for them in any way. We humans are as weak as any individual wave in comparison to the great ocean that carries the waves to the shore. This great mystery of life here on earth really is completely and utterly beyond our grandest imagination. And we just are, in this beautiful mystery, accepted as worthy and beautiful and imperfect. Anne Lamott says in her book, Almost Everything, "I didn't know this about grace. It meets you exactly where you are, at your most pathetic and hopeless. It loads you into its wheelbarrow and then tips you out somewhere else in ever so slightly better shape." One last poem from Rumi to close this off. "Now I lay me down to stay awake. I pray, Lord, take my soul, take it into your wakefulness, so that I can get this one bit of wisdom clear. Grace comes to forgive, and then forgive again." Rumi, 13th century, amazing. Grace comes to forgive, and then forgive again. Grace is what allows us to forgive our own imperfections, our sense of defeat, our self-created impediments. Yes, we need to keep learning from our mistakes, but grace says, you are worthy. As you are accepted. Head up, eyes open, walk on. Amen. Blessed be.
Takes a lifetime to open our eyes.
our outreach recipient for the month of December is the Lookout Housing and Health Society. Lookout's an amazing organization. It provides non-judgmental, non-sectarian services to adults who cope with a wide variety of challenges. It prides itself on a positive flow of tenants through the housing continuum, from outreach to emergency shelter, to traditional housing, transitional housing, to supportive housing when achievable, and ultimately, when available, to market housing. That's amazing. There are 45 shelter beds and 25 supporting housing units on the North Shore. Please give as generously as you're able. Unless you mark otherwise on your offering envelope, all of today's collection will go to Lookout. And a reminder that you can give by e-transfer or credit card with instructions on the screen. Thank you for your generosity.
By the way, they're not Allison Nixon.
In Bethlehem, a manger waits, long ago and so today, where hatred-weary people pray. Love will come and lay there, and so do countless staples stand, in hearts as harsh as desert lands, of shelters in the wind and sand. So love will come and stay there. Love that opens fists of hate, heaps of gold on beggars' plates. Love that shows a kindly face to enemies and strangers. And the walls of stables tremble so when the winds of fear and judgment blow. For a stable hopes in love alone, and knows that love's the answer. For love the prophet's only word, the only lesson left to learn, the only end of heaven's work, and the only road that goes there. Love that sees with mercy's eyes, hold its arms out open wide, thread its loom with separate lives, and weaves them all together. So may the lamps of stables glow brightly, that their light may go for miles in the darkness so. Love will find its way there. Love is there.
Beautiful. Thank you both. Thank you for your generosity to Lookout Shelter. We have a few announcements this morning. Can you smell the soup? We invite you down afterwards for soup. Thanks to Diane Hicks and to her friends for cooking a feast for all of us. Suggested donation is $5, but come $5 or not. Next week is the Christmas Carol service, which is a favorite in our community. It's a 1-hour service with lots of music. I think there are 6 carols we're going to sing and several beautiful pieces by Vox Lumina. There'll be a few seasonal readings by some of our own members also. It will be joyous and uplifting and will help get us all in the festive spirit. So please join us next Sunday. And invite your friends. In the foyer, you'll see these paper copies, held the right way around, of invitations. And they're meant to be shared with friends or family who might be interested. They describe the carol service, the Christmas Eve service, which is 6 p.m. on December 24th here. And there's also a beautiful blue Christmas that Carrie Burke is offering. Thanks very much kindly to Carrie, who's offering an event for those of us who find the holidays difficult and a little less full of joy. Those invitation cards were also emailed out on Friday, and so there's a digital version that you can forward on to friends if you don't want a paper copy. We look forward to welcoming some new faces to those seasonal events. We'll be creating 25 Christmas food hampers this year, and therefore people living in transitional housing at Lookout. So for the next 2 weeks, please bring donations of non-perishable goods, and you can put them in the 2 baskets underneath the table in the foyer. Elaine Duval is kindly organizing that for us, and she'll arrange for them to be packaged and dropped off to Lookout. Starting in mid-January, the Sunday Services team is offering Deepening Connections. It's a series of 4 meet and greet sessions. It's intended for folks to get to know each other a little bit better and also serve as a crash course in UU principles. It's an opportunity to explore whatever questions you may have about this unique faith of ours. And do you have a hard time singing the songs here? Were you told at some point in your life you shouldn't sing? Allison is kindly offering a 6-week class just for you, just for absolute beginners. It'll be held between January 26th and March 2nd. It's on Sundays right after the service, 12 till 12:30. Please contact Allison with questions. Are there any other announcements? Excellent. Then let's rise as we are able, and we're going to sing with the choir that's coming up a reprise of the song performed earlier, Live in Love, so we can all learn this song together.
So you just heard it. You sang a little bit. So I'm going to conduct to you folks. Andy will still do the first verse. You can sing along if you want. Yeah, that would be totally okay.
Open
going to extinguish our flame as we close this time together. We extinguish this flame, but carry with us the light of vision and the warmth of hope. The world calls to us to live with greater depth, meaning, and purpose. We go forth with courage and love and grace. Tish Warren said, "To hope is to borrow grace." But grace is there. It's always there. When we pause for the moments of the heart that happen between our busy thoughts, there it is, that invisible power of grace to unfold in us, to suddenly feel, I am all right, just because. Grace says, you are worthy as you are accepted. Let us feel that acceptance. Let us live that acceptance. And let us help others feel it too. Please rise, join hands as you're willing, and let us sing together, Circle Round.
Peace.